Hey, everybody, and this episode is for all of my listeners who are in sales leadership or seller roles, doesn't matter. I've got a thesis that sounds scary, but I think the answer's relatively straightforward. This is my thesis. There's going to be 2 extinction events that are going to take place within sales organizations. The first extinction event is the CRO, so the revenue leader, who cannot understand that when you implement a tool for your sellers to go use, the panacea. Let's use LinkedIn Sales Navigator as an example for the 2 extinction events, right? So LinkedIn Sales Navigator, CRO goes to CFO. Let's implement Sales Nav for the whole sales force. I've met LinkedIn. This thing is brilliant. I've had the demo. It's amazing. It's a bit expensive, but let's get it implemented. What the CRO doesn't do in that situation is they don't embed and change any workflow for the sellers. They kind of just throw the license out there. Maybe they do the technical training, click through just enough to get through the quiz, right? And so they don't do the workflow. They don't do the process piece. And so the CRO who implements an AI tool in the same way, because if you thought Sales Nav was expensive, wait till you start seeing the bills and the invoices coming in for the token usage for AI tools. So the CRO who introduces the tool with the best intentions in the world, but can't handle the workflow and the process change to embed the tool in the new sales process, they will become extinct. The second category in sales who will become extinct are the sellers themselves who don't use the AI tool to bring value to their customers. Let me go back to the Sales Nav example. There's lots of people listening to this podcast right now who have a Sales Navigator license who don't use it. I see them, they come onto my advanced sales prospecting programs the whole time. Oh yeah, I've got Sales Nav. No, it's not that good. No, it's not that good. It's kind of okay for a bit of research. Well, they're not actually, they don't understand the value of it because they're not conducting a workflow day in, day out where they could actually extract the value from Sales Navigator, but they get away with not using it. Great news, everybody, because that category in sales becomes extinct as well. So it's the seller who won't use the AI tool to scale themselves, to do the heavy lifting, to ultimately bring more value to their customers, to help with insight and intelligence, to understand the customer situation, understand the problems the customer is experiencing. And you've been listening to me long enough. I hate the term sales. I've always thought of myself as a problem solver. So I go build a relationship with a customer. Customer trusts me because I've made the effort. I'm doing tons of research. I'm trying to be as proactive as possible, bring as much insight as possible. And then they share and open up about the real problem statement. And then I help them solve it within the political environment in which they operate. And so they're the 2 categories of extinction events that's going to happen within our community, within the sales community, right? You could have argued that that extinction event should have occurred with Sales Nav, just to kind of put a bow on using Sales Nav as an example. Really, it should. Because if you're not using Sales Nav, you don't understand the value of it, and clearly you're not hunting for new business. You kind of at let's just call it the more waiting for the renewal end of the sales cycle, right? And I'm all about you guys, especially if you work with me, I'm early sales stage. We should be driving bigger deals, better relationships, higher up the customer's org chart. We should be relevant. We shouldn't be perceived as a box shifter or just a kind of like a fulfillment engine. We should be perceived as a strategic advisor to our customers. That's the end of the sales spectrum that I'm at, and that everyone who comes into my program, that they're at that end. Sometimes they kind of like get dragged there a little bit, kicking and screaming, but inside they kind of know, they feel, oh, this is what we should be doing, isn't it? Yeah, bringing value to our customers, helping them solve their most difficult and challenging problems. Ultimately, now the customers, whatever market vertical you sell into, your customers are looking at AI and they're running into the same problems, which is, we can see the value of all these tools, but how do we incorporate that into a workflow that will actually get us some value back? And so, ironically, customers have the same problem. They need more help than ever. So a sales organization that's been gone through the process of choosing it's more or less off-the-shelf AI tools, right? But then going through that process of, guys, we've got to fix the data. Finally, we've always known that. But now and that's going to take, there's always like a little bit of a long tail on fixing the data, right? Does it ever all get done? Maybe, maybe not. But we've got to fix the data, but we've got to implement a new way of working. We've got to implement a new workflow. And that's what your customers are going to be having to do with their AI tools. Otherwise, they'll be in exactly the same boat. They're going to go right back to the same CFO that signed off the sales nav licenses and then didn't re-sign the sales nav licenses the next year, right? We've all come across that scenario, right? Because the usage report was, well, they're not using it, so why would I be paying like another $1,000 a seat per month or whatever it is for a sales nav license that's not being used? Wait till you see the token costs. And I think that's going to be the new KPI in sales. It's going to be like, are your sales force using tokens? Are they using the token allocation? And so what I did is, and the reason I think I'm about 10 days, maybe 12 days since the last podcast episode. Brilliant. Ginny was just awesome on that. Go check out, I think, episode 45. This is episode 46. But Ginny was actually talking about a lot of this. What's the division of labor between the human in the sales organization and the AI? And you got to get that right. That's the workflow piece. That's what she's referring to, right? And so I was kind of testing with Ginny on that episode. I said, I've been kind of thinking about this Limbic U plus AI type concept of where do I go next with helping sellers who want to do this, who really, really want to just seize the value of using AI. I was kind of thinking about, what's the mindset? What's the label that we put on this thing? So I was kind of like Limbic U, and she was like, and actually it kind of works. The limbic brain, the emotional brain, 2 million years of evolution. Anyone who's come on any of my programs know that I start with the neuroscience of influence, right? Which is all about understanding the customer's emotional brain, the irrationality of how their brains work. How do you get attention from that person when their emotional brain automatically distrusts you? That's the default setting, right? Because we're trying to hunt and get through the door and secure meetings and then excite the customer and have them really believe in our credibility and build trust with them. And all of that is primarily dealing with the customer's emotional brain. So that's kind of like the limbic system. And so I was like breaking it down. Well, that seems to be the piece of the relationship building, the trust building, the gut feel and instinct, understanding the politics, understanding the personalities. Hey, my AI's kind of said we should do it like this, but I'm like, no, with this particular customer, that would be the wrong move. And so that's your limbic system, the most powerful part of your brain, and you're building a relationship with the customer's limbic system. In my opinion, that never gets AI'd out of this. The whole time, you've got actual, real human beings who are the customer on the other side of this dynamic, where supply side, they're on the customer side. A really good an enterprise, complex, commercial seller, public sector seller, they don't get AI'd out of this equation. They just don't. Because the AI can't do, it'll have a go, but it can't do the emotional piece. And that is ultimately what we do in sales, is we manage the emotional piece. Now, the other so that's the limbic system, right? 2 million years of evolution, a Homo sapien, like a human, which is what you are, if you listen to this podcast. My dog is laying under the desk here, trying to keep cool. I should say, it's shout out to everybody on Bank Holiday Monday. It's Bank Holiday Monday in the UK here. It's Memorial Day. So happy Memorial Day to all of my friends listening to this in the USA. I've got my, I've got my San Francisco backdrop on because 2 weeks today, landing it back in SFO, mainly because British Airways have cancelled the route to San Jose Airport, which if you're going to go to Silicon Valley, you want to land at San Jose Airport. It's just a breeze compared to SFO. But British Airways, in their infinite wisdom, have cancelled that flight. SFO, and you've got about a 40-minute Uber on your hands and a whole world of pain with TSA and all the tourists. And it's World Cup week, like World Cup's kicking off that week. There's 5 games in Silicon Valley, which is in the Santa Clara Stadium, which is kind of down the road from where I'll be staying. But yeah, 2 weeks today, back in Silicon Valley, really looking forward to that event. And that's going to be all about it, just getting an orchestration workflow for a really amazing team. They're already successful, really amazing teams, getting an orchestration workflow of how do we divide this up? Back to Ginny's point, that cognitive division. What do we retain ownership of? And what do we get the AI to do? And so you have your prefrontal cortex. That's the piece I was meandering back around to. So you've got your limbic system, 2 million years of evolution. My dog laid on the floor here, she has a limbic system too. We share it across multiple species, and mainly the limbic system's there to help you survive, fight, flight, freeze, feelings of love, sense of humor, kind of the irrational stuff, if you like. But anyway, that's the limbic system. Then you have the prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex behind your forehead, why humans have relatively large foreheads. It's because we've got this new area of the brain. The Latin term for it is the neocortex, which is Latin for new cover. So the new part of in evolutionary terms, the new part of the brain, the human brain, if you like, where we can think rationally, logically, or make strong like database decisions. But that's not the way complex sales works, right? You all know that listening to this. And so, but the prefrontal cortex, can that be augmented by AI? Oh, yes. AI is superb at what the prefrontal cortex in a human does. Superb at analyzing large data sets, becoming complex, kind of like math problems. Just thinking at greater scale. And for a human to kind of kick your prefrontal cortex into play to start actually using it would probably be like if I said, hey, what's 2 + 2? And you'd say, it's 4. You don't have to think about it. But if I say, what's 37 times 128? Well, you've then got to use your prefrontal cortex to really figure out the answer to that equation. That's what it feels like. You're going to get to that level of almost like frustration about it. And it's also like in sales prospecting, that when we send the stakeholder persona the long email outlining their business challenge and here's the solution, here's all the data points. What we're doing actually in that scenario is they're sat there happily on their LinkedIn or their email or just their phone rings. And they're using their limbic system, their emotional brain, and what we're asking them to do is to kick in their human brain. And most of the time they go, I just don't trust this person prospecting with me. That's the emotional brain. Or they say, this person's contacting me about AI. I don't perceive their brand to be a particularly big AI player. They're not rational, well thought through. Let me really think about this. Let me go do some research here. They're not rational, thought through kind of responses, because they're emotional brain responses, which is super fast, instinctive, now default to no. And so if you look at, if I set myself as an example, academically, I was freaking hopeless, right? I got through my school, like we have exams in the UK called GCSEs when you're 16 years old. I failed my maths. I failed it twice, or in the end, I just scraped in. I failed the first time. I think I scraped the second one. I then went on to do my A-levels, which is like what you do when you're 18 in the UK. I failed all of them twice. All of them. It's fucking shit show, frankly. So anyway, so academically, I was crap. So I didn't go to university, but yet I've been the top selling salesperson a number of times. And I've closed over $2 billion of sales in my sales career. I've built my entire business. I train global sales teams all over the globe. But is it an IQ problem? Is it another problem? I don't know what the problem is. I never kind of went and did the whole, let's go and assess this. I just got on with it. And I did what I do really naturally very well, which is I care. And I'm really interested in solving the customer's problem. I'm pretty good at building a relationship with them. I'm pretty good at understanding people and politics. And so that's what I built my sales career on. The prefrontal cortex piece is probably where I have some sort of a challenge. And interestingly, I was talking to Ginny and she raised it on the pod. So I'm not kind of like talking out of school, but I thought that was really cool of her to do that, actually. She said, actually, AI drafting me an email is really, because she said I'm dyslexic. And so if you speak to Ginny, go back and watch the episode. Well, there's no lack of super intelligent person, just so personable, brilliant in every respect. But yeah, like writing emails and spellings and all this sort of stuff is just such a hassle for her brain because of the way it's made up. And so those kind of prefrontal cortex kind of like things that we have to get done. I find it hard to read through the 401k. It's just like, I'm just like, can't do it. I find it really hard to get started with a message. I find large data sets really tricky. Going through my CRM and trying to like see all these different cells and piece it all together, my brain just can't handle that. I'm much more of a visual learner, for example, which is why I'm always on a whiteboard drawing stuff, because unless I'm drawing it, I'm not learning it, and I'm not ideating. Even if that's ideating with myself, I'm up on a whiteboard. I'm drawing it out for myself. And so the prefrontal cortex can be massively enhanced, augmented, whatever you want to call it, using these AI tools. And so my view is that we don't need to have any sort of like crises here. We just need to have a sensible goal, if I can put it like that, which would be a target operating model for the sales organization. And that target operating model is not, we're going to try our best to find some AI tools so we can eliminate the sales force. Now, we want the AI tools to have two distinct layers to them. I think that, and there may become more layers over time, but right now, I think, say you've got Salesforce.com running, maybe you've got Agent Force, you're like, we're kind of like playing with it, we're not sure. You might have, and most people have got LinkedIn or Sales Navigator. That's not really AI'd up. They've got Account IQ, but I've not really played with that too much. But maybe you've got, let's just use Microsoft Copilot. So you've got Salesforce, and you've got Microsoft Copilot, which is constantly getting in the way when I'm on Microsoft apps and stuff on my. But I've got it right. And I tested some prompts in it the other day around research. It was really good. In fact, the research that came back, I would say, was better in a couple of respects than my Claude Opus 4.7 model, which I'm using in co-work. Yeah, I was impressed by Copilot. I just never really used it. It wasn't like a thing. I just never really used it. And then, so I've got an intelligence layer of tooling, Agent Force, using LinkedIn for research. Be careful, because large language models look like they're going onto LinkedIn, but actually they're kind of extracting that detail from what LinkedIn has pushed out to the web. The LinkedIn, someone described it to me the other day as a walled garden. And yeah, large language models are prevented from getting onto LinkedIn. I've seen it done. I've seen it done with Claude Cowork. So if you give access to Claude Cowork, if you give that tool access to your browser, then it can start having a look onto LinkedIn, but LinkedIn blocks the large language models. So that's really interesting, isn't it? Because we kind of need to know that, because you can fall into the trap of it looks like the large language model is doing a really thorough job of LinkedIn, but actually it's not. So that's part of the workflow that we just need to okay, we recognize that, we understand that. How are we going to apply the workflow then? So if the AI is not doing a thorough job, the human in the loop, the salesperson is. So you've got that intelligence layer. And then you've got another layer of AI tooling, which is the execution layer. And so that's me then going, okay, so now I've done my intelligence, I've got my research. I now want to move into execution mode. And for most people in sales, and do tell me if there's another way that this works, I haven't ever found it. But the only way to grow an account, or the only way to break into and secure qualified pipeline within a new logo, is to go hunting. I mean, tell me, please do just leave a comment if I'm missing something. Please do leave a comment below if there's another way. Okay, there isn't. I know there isn't, and there's definitely no AI solution to that I've seen, and I've been looking. So we've got to go hunting, right, and building trust with people that don't know us, with strangers, and we're back to the emotional brain, aren't we? So with the execution layer, I wouldn't want to outsource fully the execution to the AI, because the AI is quite good at, say, it can give you a framework for a reach out. So say someone like myself, or say Ginny, hey, I just want to, can you just give me some structure around a reach out? Well, then I need to have a really good prompt. And so that's what I've been developing, is actually a prompt set to help my customers arrive with a workflow when their salespeople are still remain as I call it the orchestrator. And so I've built this target operating model, and then we get in a room, we workshop, we come up with what's the right workflow for your team, going into your market verticals with your challenges, whatever it might be. And so the salesperson remains the orchestrator, because they can't just click, hey, I've got the draft, I just click send, or I just copied and pasted it across. That's not going to work, right? Same with business, trying to develop an outline business case for with a customer. It's just, you go look really stupid if you let AI do all of the execution for you, because it's going to be wrong, right? The other day, I was using Claude. So this is the primary 4.7 model, right? And I was using Claude, and I was saying to Claude, funny enough, I'm going to fly to San Jose. I don't mind doing a layover. Can you come up with some route options for me that are the lowest cost, but best routes and maybe a good cabin, whatever it might be. Click, off it goes. And Claude came up with some really good job, did a really good job on that, right? And it came up with all these different options and all the rest of it. And so did a really great job. Then it tagged on to the end of its wonderful list. Oh, and if you get a choice of seat selection, you should sit on the left-hand side of the aircraft, because as you fly out of London, you're going to fly over Ireland, you're going to see the Irish coastline, then you're going to see Greenland and Finland. I was like, wait a second, I've done this flight many, many times, and I know the best view, if you want to see Greenland, as you're flying from the UK to the USA, you want to be sat on the right-hand side of the aircraft. Trust me, that's going to give you the best view. Like if I'm with my daughter or whatever, we were flying to America, I'd try and get a seat for her on the right-hand side, because she's going to see Iceland and Greenland, and you get to the coastline, and I love that. It's the views, trust me, the view's better on the right-hand side. Anyway, Claude said to the left-hand side, I said, Claude, that's not right. And it was like, oh yeah, actually, I got that wrong. And actually, you all have had your experiences of that. That it wasn't that Claude's a bad tool, but you're the orchestrator. You're the one in charge of this thing, right? It is a tool, and it's going to make mistakes. And just in the same way that if you say to me, oh no, Ben, you want to be sat on the left-hand side of the aircraft, and you say that to me, or the equivalent of, if you're prospecting or trying to build a relationship with me to sell me something, I'm going to think you're stupid. I'm like, no, that's not right. And so we're in charge of the AI. So we want to use it for execution, but only up to a point. But still, that execution, I think probably for me, the execution feels much more around scale, helping us scale, than the fine kind of like iteration that's required of a really strong kind of series of stakeholder reach out strategy. No, we'll stay in control of that, I think, won't we? So that's, and then of course that's my kind of like target operating model concept. So I've come up with a target operating model that's hey, this is the starting point. How do we then execute that with your sales teams? What do we need to refine and build it out, workshop it for a couple of days, which is what we're going to be doing over in Silicon Valley. So that should be fun. And so the problem isn't back to the Extinction events. The problem isn't we don't have enough AI tools. You do. You really, really do. The answer isn't, oh, I need the next AI tool. Oh, I saw this thing on LinkedIn or, God forbid, TikTok or whatever, YouTube. No, that's not the answer. Which should be good news. You don't go spend any money on any new tools. If you've got SFDC, if you've got Agentforce, if you've got Microsoft Copilot, you've probably got like the Gong and all of this, where you do the sale, kind of like role plays and stuff like that. Oh, great. It won't be like the real thing, right? Does it help you prepare? Yes, it does. But it's just integrating those tools into the workflow. And of course, any of the existing tools that you've got, then they all bring out their AI chatbot or whatever, don't they? So it's like, the problem isn't lack of tooling, but my thesis is, and this is the Extinction event from back to the CRO, their Extinction event. If you think, oh, I'm going to do the technical training, everyone's clicking through just enough to get through the quiz at the end. Sometimes they have to go back a couple of steps. Oh, what was it? Second time around, I got through the quiz. If that's the approach, then you will become extinct, because you're going to spend a ton of money. The board's and the CEO's expectation is going to be super high. And yeah, you're going to become extinct. And you deserve to become extinct, in my opinion. Is seller also. seller, and has also got a massive role to play in this. Anyone kind of like slow rolling this, putting the air brakes on, a little bit of sabotage going on. This thing's coming to take my job, so I won't use it. I think all you do is just like delay by about 2 quarters becoming extinct, because the CRO and the seller at your competitor who got this right, and it's never 100% correct. You always need to refine along the way, right? But he's got, let's say your competitor's sales organization have taken Microsoft Copilot and Agentforce and done something with it to bring much more value to their customers at a much greater scale, then you will become extinct. It's just as simple as that. And that might take 2 quarters, or it might take 4 quarters. But those roads just go to the same place, don't they? And I think my value proposition is to help revenue leaders and salespeople go the good way with this, which is a sensible workflow around the AI tools that we've already got, that we can extract maximum value from them. And then when the new shiny AI tool over there comes along and we like the look of that, we've already demonstrated that we know how to get a workflow in place around the tools that we've got. We have a kind of cookie cutter way of introducing these into kind of like sandbox environment, get them out there being used, and then get them up into production. We've already done that with Copilot and the easy ones, right? And so that's what my role is. And I realized that, which is why you haven't heard from me for about 10 days or so. Really realized that over the last kind of 2 to 3 months, it's become apparent that already you're seeing the gap in the salespeople coming on my programs who are either using AI or they're not, or they're using it incorrectly, or they're overusing it. So you've got the overusers are pushing out AI slop. Their response rates have just tanked to 0.2%. And it's always like, it's because the customers' inboxes are full and, la, 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 la. No, it isn't. It's because ChatGPT wrote you an email, you copied and pasted it across and hit send and changed the name, and it made you look stupid. And the customer realized their emotional brain is on the lookout for the M dash. It's on the lookout for the way AI writes stuff. I get people hitting me up with prospect emails, LinkedIn messages, phone calls the whole time. I can tell when it's been written by a robot. And my emotional brain just says, no, don't trust this person, forget it. Equally, when someone prospects with me and it's really good, they're really well researched, clearly done their homework about me, my business, I give them a meeting. So I'm actually quite a good example of a founder business owner who helps people to prospect effectively, but also I receive a lot of prospecting into myself. And so I can see both sides of that equation play out. So I've come up with this operating model. I've come up with a prompt pack. I've come up with a way that you address this and a process by which you arrive with the right tools in the execution intelligence workflow that's going to work for your business, because there's no like one size fits all here. And then I was thinking, well, what's the name? I'm going to close out on here with an offer to you. Well, what am I going to call this? And anyone who's done a call with me recently, you know who you are. Hopefully you're listening to this. Probably you are. And I was like, I think it's the program name is Limbic U plus AI. And I was kind of like, every time I say Limbic, I have to spend 4 minutes explaining what the limbic system is. So that's probably not going to work. It's absolutely what we're doing at the start of the program, by the way. If any of the sales teams or revenue leaders or sales enablement leaders who work with me know that. Everybody's getting accustomed to the limbic system. So, but it doesn't make a good name. So I was like, right, what is it? And I was like, actually, it's not Limbic U plus AI. It's EQU times AI. That's what the equation looks like. EQ is your emotional intelligence. All comes out the limbic system, the emotional brain, right? Your emotional intelligence does not get AI'd out of this. Never. All the time, there's still humans on the customer side. Emotional intelligence beats IQ every time. But the IQ piece is the prefrontal cortex, the piece that AI is phenomenal at. And it's not EQ, your EQ, so it's EQ you. It's not plus AI, it's times AI, because of the multiplier effect that AI has when you have the workflow been augmented and driven by AI tools. It has it's almost like an exponential multiplier effect. So my new program variant is called EQU times AI. If you want to hear more about it, you've got a couple of ways of doing that. Below, I'm going to add a link to my Calendly. Just book a 30-minute call with me. It just comes through as 30 minutes as like the standard thing. If you want to do 10 or 15 or just make it a phone call rather than Teams, then whatever works for you, that's absolutely fine. You could be loading the dishwasher and we could be having a chat. So the Calendly link is below. And that's one way of doing this. If you like, I don't really want to speak to you, dude, but it's kind of interesting and I do kind of have this problem statement, then sign up for the much talked about, never implemented newsletter. Newsletter is live. First one went out last week. The next newsletter, which will hit your inbox on Tuesday of next week, then sign up for that. It's going to cover everything that I've just covered in this podcast episode. That's what the newsletter is for. So everyone that I've asked, I'm kind of like asking permission. Hey, I didn't just want to add all the email addresses that I have to the newsletter because that's going to be annoying, at best annoying. So I'm kind of going around asking people. So you probably get an email from me if you know me and say, hey, can I add you to the newsletter? And just unsubscribe if you don't want it. That's based on my Substack. That's integrated into my website. So if you go to bendrakes.com, you're going to see somewhere to sign up for the newsletter, but I'll put that link below also. You can message me. You're going to see this. If you're watching this, it'll be up on because it's on YouTube. You're listening, you're on Apple Podcasts mainly. Apple Podcasts has got really popular for AI outcomes podcasts. So thank you to everybody listening. This is on Apple Podcasts. But yeah, maybe hop onto LinkedIn, ping me a DM, connect with me on LinkedIn, and then we can set something up. So yeah, that's the Extinction event. 2 Extinction events, nailed on, gonna happen. I rarely make a prediction, but this one, we've seen it all before, right? And we've seen the cost of tools not being used. You're not going to get away with it with AI because your competitors are going to one of them's going to get this right, and that will precipitate an extinction event for you. Doesn't need to be that way. So hook up with me. Let's talk about it. Excited to be over back in the Valley in 2 weeks today. 2 weeks tomorrow, actually. I don't know. Losing track of time. Happy bank holiday, everybody. Happy Memorial Day. Links below. See you on the next one. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.